Why don't you come up, Emily? For those of you who don't know her, Emily's next door to us in Rosa's class. She's in 3rd grade too. And I asked her to come in today on purpose because yesterday, for Mother's Day, her celebration was probably a little bit different than any of the celebrations that any of us had in this class. Do you know CBK Cookies? They sponsored a contest. It was a Mother's Day essay writing contest. But when it was over, a couple of people told me, you should read Emily's essay. It was really interesting and really nice. And I thought...
I remember the day that they came to film. It was very exciting. I wore a little dress and earrings, and it was a big deal. I knew they were filming something that I was going to have to get up in front of a class I had never really been in to read an essay, and that it was going to be used for this movie that would later be shown to lots of people.
The night before it was due, you wrote it.
I wrote it.
And I didn't even know you wrote it. And then we got on the bus down Broadway, and you said, you want to see the essay I wrote?
Yeah.
And I said, sure. I'm looking at this essay and I'm thinking, I can't believe I didn't read this ahead of time, because I just thought it was so political, and I thought, it's a great essay, and how are they going to react to this essay?
Why don't you move up so they could hear you, and in a nice, really loud voice.
My mothers mean so much to me. I have 2 mothers. 2 moms is pretty nice. Well, it's more than pretty nice, it's really nice. You can't imagine. Although having 2 mothers is a problem to others, I respect that that's the way they think, and I can't do anything about it. I still think that those people think stupidly.
This once happened with a boy in my class who could not come to my house because my parents were lesbians. One night I called his house and his mother told me their version of the Bible. I stood up for my mothers and knew that many kids of my class were supporting me and calling me to see how I was. I am proud of my moms and enjoy marching
in the Gay Pride March every single year with my moms.
So wasn't that a nice essay? Should we give Emily a round of applause?
Really, it was just about winning these cookies, and I really didn't realize that it, that what I was saying was actually a very important deal to say in front of a class.
What happens when the largest public school system in the country mandates that all first graders must learn about the positive aspects of families headed by gays and lesbians? What we found was a civic brawl.
In the early 90s, really throughout the country, there were efforts among more conservative right-wing people and organizations to take over school boards, really throughout the country, and the wedge issue, the issue that was being used, was this effort to stop the homosexual agenda from getting their curriculum and their evil ways into schools.
And the votes are in, but the controversy continues in Merrimack over homosexuality and the classroom.
That's not a family. Show me somewhere in the Bible where it says that. It's not there.
When you go back into the early 90s, there was an enormous reluctance to address gay issues in school. There were few policies that enabled people to do it.
There simply was nothing going on. There were probably fewer than 50 gay-straight alliances in the entire country. Only 1 state protected students from harassment and discrimination based on sexual orientation, and virtually no teachers were addressing the issue.
Bill Clinton and Al Gore represent the most pro-lesbian and pro-gay ticket in history, and so they do.
He wants to repeal the ban on homosexuals in the military and appoint homosexuals to his administration.
That's change, all right, but that's not the kind of change America needs. It's not the kind of change America wants, and it's not the kind of change we can abide in a nation we still call God's country.
We used to have teachers who used to come to our meetings and come in secret because they couldn't admit, or they couldn't have the public know that they were taking part in this, this meeting where we were discussing issues around sexual orientation. And it didn't matter whether they were GLBT or not, it was just a scary time for them.
For kids growing up, never seeing anyone on television who was openly gay or lesbian, never reading any books about anyone who was openly gay or lesbian, all that they got subjected to was negative innuendos in mainstream movies, right and left, where it was just, a lot of snickering about the idea that someone could be gay or lesbian.
That's it. Einhorn is a man! Oh my God! Einhorn is a man!
And the information they were getting was all the anti-gay name-calling that goes on in the hallways, in the classrooms, people slamming you against a locker and calling you, a homophobic slur. That was about it. And adults were not talking to kids at all about the truth about gay people. I was a young mother. My son was about 4 years old. I had just won an Academy Award for one of my earliest films, and I was trying to figure out, what do I do next? And I got this idea that I wanted to try to use my documentary filmmaking skills to try to make the world a better place for him and for all of his friends.
I really felt strongly on a very personal level that my own kid would go to school in an environment where she would be encouraged to learn about these issues in the context of just diversity. And I felt really strongly about wanting to, combat that and present, inject a little sanity into the debate.
So what we came up with was, what if we made a film that really made the case that if we're serious about preventing anti-gay prejudice, that we really have to challenge this prevailing cultural belief that you can't talk to children about gay people, that, that gay issues are an adult issue and they don't belong anywhere near children.
We thought we were going to make a film that would kind of prove that homophobia existed in the elementary school years. And as we got into it, what we realized, and what was a lot more exciting to us and what we thought would have a much bigger impact, was to document and really showcase the amazing work that was being done by some very brave people to do this kind of education.
What I want you to do when you go in just a minute and work in small groups, you're not going to be painting, okay? You're going to be writing down whatever comes to your mind when you hear the word gay or when you hear the word lesbian.
So nothing's right or wrong
There is
in
no
this
right
either?
That's right. There's no right or wrong.
I remember the first time I heard about it and thought, whoa, they're going to talk about homophobia and anti-gay prejudice with elementary school kids. That's great.
So the activity's about gay people and... Mm-hmm. Oh.
It was so revolutionary. It was so new. And to talk about it at the elementary level, that was the really revolutionary part.
If someone says that they're gay, or they say, someone else is gay, or someone is homosexual, what does that mean?
Well, what was key is that both Chaz and Helen came to it as activists. For them, it was very cause and effect. Here's all the reasons why people say you can't talk about gay people to children. And we're going to tear down those arguments one by one by one, and we're going to do it through the film. And then the part that was genius was, of course, they let the children do most of the talking.
I heard this on the news once because I think a gay person, it was a boy, man walked into a bar, and there was really strict people that really strict on gay people, and he got beat up.
And do you think that was an okay thing to do or not?
No. How did they find out? Because that's how their life is. They're gay, so what? That's how the life is. I don't think people should be strict about them, because if they were gay, they wouldn't want to be getting beat up or stuff.
Okay.
Can I go to the bathroom?
Yes.
When I think of gay, I think of someone like a boy working funny, like a girl.
When she told us that we was gonna have this documentary, I was excited because I felt like I had a lot to say about the subject.
Can I
I remember myself very active, loved playing with the girls, playing around with my friends, very talkative. I treated it just like a different subject, like, oh, we're going to learn something new today. Let me participate and say my opinion, get feedback, and just be myself. That's all I can be, and learn something, which I did.
You came up with a huge number of words that I'm curious about where you get your ideas from. Where do you get your information? Where do you get your thoughts? Where do you get your images from? Samira?
I mostly get it from my parents and my aunts and uncles because they're always talking about it, saying it's wrong and you shouldn't do it. But I think it's just the way a person is. You can't really change it.
My aunt calls me and says, "Samira, you're on TV." And so I turn on the PBS and I'm watching I saw the video and like all came rushing back. Oh yeah, I forgot I did that.
Why do they consider people that do that gay?
Why is that word used, or?
She made it really easy for us all to talk about these things and to create an environment where we didn't feel awkward asking questions, and we didn't feel, you know what I mean, that we were being offensive or being hurtful, but just telling her what we thought.
I'm in college. I go to SUNY Old Westbury, and I'm studying business marketing. That documentary definitely exposed me to be not ignorant to gays and lesbians. It helped me realize that just accept people for who they are rather than based on their personal life. And if they don't do anything to harm you, then there's no reason for you to be mad at that person.
One of my best friends came out to me, and I realized how oppressive an environment can be when your identity is being negated. I felt that also racially, and I feel it often. So I could relate to her experience that way. And so together we started a Gay Straight Alliance at my school, recognizing that we all are faced with something that causes us, you know, to have to fight constantly just to be comfortable.
So we had this great idea, right? We're going to show people real live teachers in action addressing these issues. And then the question was, great, well, where are they? And at that time in the mid-90s, there were hardly any.
Finding the teachers and the schools that we filmed in its elementary was an incredible challenge. And I really just followed every single lead from any phone call I got about any teacher who might be doing something like this that would be willing to have us come film.
A teacher would say, I'm doing this work in the classroom, and they would go to the principal, and the principal would say, are you kidding me? I need a camera crew documenting like this, like I need a gun to my head.
Various stereotypes that you've either heard or experienced yourself.
In the process of getting permission, we really worked very, very closely with the teachers in the film who were extremely invested in this topic and in the film itself. So in many cases, they really had to go to bat. They had to put their own jobs on the line and negotiate with their principals of their school. But every single place that we filmed had a fight or a long process of getting the permission that we needed to get in there and film. I remember in the case of Madison, we did end up finding a school where 4 straight teachers were addressing these issues, and then ensued the battle to convince their administrators to let us film there.
I have a picture of someone who lives in Madison who's a politician, and she is my supervisor, my county supervisor in my district, and her name is Tammy Baldwin. And she's famous around the country because she's a lesbian who has decided that she wants to be in politics, and that's what she's going to do. Our principal was very lukewarm about the whole thing and went straight to her supervisors, and they basically tried to set up as many roadblocks as they could, you know, to stop us from doing it.
She said, well, you can't film in a real classroom, but you could come rent a room after school, and you could have volunteer students come and you could fake a lesson.
I mean, the idea that you have to hide something to make it happen is totally antithetical to the idea of addressing this issue, because if you can only do it in secret, what good is that? So I'm going to put the word gay on the board in the middle. Teachers have the rights to do these things. And fortunately, our teachers union is very strong in Madison, and they basically told us, they said, don't back down.
Finally, they agreed to give us permission to film, but they insisted that the principal of the school sit in the classroom while we filmed, just to make sure, I don't know what, that something, scary didn't happen.
What? Anybody know who's singing? I said, who's singing? Stacy.
Elton John. I've
Right.
heard this a billion times.
Right. Did you know that Elton John was a gay man?
No.
Now you know.
I watched the film the other day, and I think I was probably the only person in the world to not know Elton John was gay. I actually didn't remember that part, so when I saw the video, when I was so shocked about Elton John, I was really embarrassed. I go to school at Drury University in Springfield, Missouri. I'm a junior there. My majors are sociology, criminology, psychology, and French. I talked to my friends at school about it in the South, and they're absolutely shocked that we were presented with that stuff at such a young age. Learning about gay and lesbian issues gave us vocabulary to talk about it. It gave us a forum to ask the questions that we wanted to ask. Our teachers were sensitive about the issue, but they were also very neutral. They would just give us the facts. They would answer our questions honestly and truthfully.
For name calling weird?
You mean you're calling somebody weird, or do you think it's weird to be gay or lesbian?
Yes, to be lesbian.
Okay.
The fact that people think that if someone's educated about gay issues that they're more likely to become gay is absurd, to say the least. I mean, I'm straight. I have a boyfriend who I'm very happy with. And I think that learning about these things that people don't usually talk about have given me tools to ask questions about other issues. Education is never wrong. If you present the facts and you allow someone to think about it for themselves, I don't think that there are very many downsides of that.
Has anybody ever made fun of any of you for any reason whatsoever?
Have somebody made fun of us?
Yeah, for any reason.
People say that I act like a girl, and sometimes I do for some
Because you're kind of
reason.
artistic and dance a lot and do stuff?
Yeah,
so
like
then they
that.
called you dance like a girl.
When I actually saw the film, it was just like, wow, I said that, and it just made me think about my life back then and how miserable I was. When I was being filmed, it started to sink in, this may be who I am, and I think I really started to kind of figure myself out a little bit. I was really scared of coming out at an early age. I did have some support at school, from teachers or friends, but I still felt like I was being targeted because I was different in the way that I talked, dressed, walked. But I remember it was soothing to hear teachers and faculty at school letting me know that it's okay, just to know that I had that support. I think that really lifted a burden off my shoulders.
We knew it was going to be controversial. Well, we had an experience early on in the edit that we knew that the right was watching us. As I was sitting in my little corner editing, somebody called and said, I'm a parent and I know what you're working on and I disagree with it, and I'm going to do whatever I can do to stop you. Let's face it, at that time, the religious right was blowing up abortion clinics. So it was not beyond the realm of possibility that we would show up one day and women's educational media wouldn't be here. Somebody would have firebombed it in the night or something, God forbid. So that affected our process. We basically were very careful not to keep any tapes in the edit room. We always had it in our mind that if they did blow up when, we could still finish the film. And I never worked on anything that had that kind of pressure on it. You know, so it does add a sense of urgency to your work.
So finally, the film was done, and we were ready to share it with the world. And it was our day of our big world premiere in San Francisco. And we were waiting for the film print to arrive from Los Angeles, and it was late, and so it was shipped up on a plane that morning. And I remember sending my mother and my sister racing off to the airport to bring the film print into the theater. And they got there literally in the nick of time, and the lights went down. And Helen and I were just sitting there squirming, terrified about what was going to happen. And within minutes, we could feel that the audience was electrified.
It was like a thunderclap had struck the audience, because people watched it and thought, oh my God, it's possible to talk about these issues in school. It's possible to talk about them with elementary age students.
I was so excited when I saw this film. The idea that you could show teachers what was possible, it was stunning. It was so exciting.
I was just touched. I was really floored by how beautiful a production it was, how positive and really wholesome and innocent the discussions were.
It was like a breath of fresh air. It showed kids around the country talking, saying the word lesbian, saying the word gay, and talking about it like it's normal, which it is.
From there, we ended up producing screenings all over the country and all over the world where that experience was replicated. We got barraged with people saying, I work with school psychologists, can I show it to them? I work with school nurses, can I show it to them? I'm part of this church group, can I show it there? And we just handed out cards right and left and said, yes, please do.
In many cases at these screenings, parents came up to me, teachers came up to me afterwards and just said, oh, I get it now. This is a huge problem, and I actually see how I might talk about this in my 3rd grade class or my 5th grade class or my kindergarten class. There are age-appropriate, reasonable ways of addressing this issue, and I get it now more.
Hi, Mrs. Selke. How was reading today? We decided to hold a screening of the film with the parents in our school. I would say we had 150 parents that were here in the audience. We screened the film. We allowed parents the time to kind of debrief and talk about it among themselves, because we all have our own stuff about that, So after that, the conversations were positive and enlightening and heartfelt. We really got some very good comments, because we had a number of parents that I knew about, but then there were others I didn't know about. We have gay and lesbian families who are raising children who are parents of our students. Yeah, okay. How are you, dear? How's your mom?
I think personally I've been somewhat of a tolerant person, but as a principal I haven't been very tolerant of anything that's kind of like uncomfortable, and oh my gosh, I got to deal with that. So it was a hard pill for me to swallow as a principal, to realize, no, we've got to deal with this right now. We've got to take forceful steps. We've got to get out in front of it. We can't let it simmer and fester. So it was so nice. After the meeting, everybody kind of had we can relax. It's not so tense, and we don't have to be as nervous and as tense talking about these things.
This film gave us a tremendous opportunity to mobilize our community in ways we'd never done before.
The idea that people would have children in schools who would be proud that their parents were gay or lesbian, or who were afraid to say that their parents were gay and lesbian. I mean, the whole idea of bullying of any kind. I mean, this was a time that was, I feel like, very dark for children who were perceived to be different in any way. And if you look at the Safe Schools movement, it was really launched as a result of the issues that this film was able to surface.
And I certainly want all of us to speak if we'd like to, and to speak freely, as we regularly do in class. I've showed this film, maybe 3 or 4 times for this course, because it gets us thinking about ways to work with families, ways to work with children, and ways to work with other educators.
Why do they wear pink triangles? Where does that come from? Do you remember talking about it in your class? Yes. That fits right in with our history.
I think one of the most important ways that the film has been used is that it's been incorporated into over 600 schools of education in the United States, where It's Elementary is now part of the curriculum to train the next generation of teachers.
I didn't take it as, like, she shouldn't have said that. I thought it was, you know, I'm not here to recruit anybody, relax, we're just going to have a dialogue about this, and it's okay to talk about it.
What if you were gay? What would your mom do then?
I have a kid that will throw out the faggot word all the time. And am I gonna open up Pandora's box and address this and say, okay, let's talk about sexuality? And I mean,
Here's, you know, this is where reading.
Before straight teachers saw It's Elementary, it was too scary to think about their students being affected by these issues because they themselves hadn't dealt with it.
So
I think after using a tool like It's Elementary, straight teachers were able to put into a context those things that they do with every other piece of knowledge. It gave them an avenue to deal with a taboo subject in the same way.
I know when I thought about teaching the subject, I know that was something that popped in the back of my mind. Are people going to think I'm gay? But actually this showed that it's really a non-issue, that the most important thing is that the kids, you know, learn about diversity and learn about the subject.
It's exciting to me to see that it actually gives people that, I don't want to say permission, it's not permission. They have permission. It's in their mission statements to make their schools safe for every child and to be inclusive of every family. But I think the film shows people how.
I think the film, and particularly the way that we were able to get it distributed, has brought together civil rights organizations, groups that are dealing with racial prejudice and racism in schools, violence prevention groups that wouldn't necessarily recognize the importance of a gay rights agenda, but in the context of schools and creating safe schools, it's really given them an opportunity to kind of go, oh yeah, we're all in this together, and it's helped people really step up to the plate and do the right thing.
In Chicago, the mayor's liaison to the lesbian and gay community decided that it was such a problem in the Chicago schools, the way homophobia was playing out, that she really wanted to get It's Elementary into every school in the district. So she teamed up with the Chicago chapter of the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network, and tennis legend Billie Jean King made a very generous donation to underwrite the cost of hundreds of copies of It's Elementary. And Mary set about trying to get it into every school in the district.
When I started to work on distributing the film, what I realized was that there was a perception in the overall community that being gay was something that, for the most part, was a white issue. And so one of my first challenges was to make sure they understood that that was not the case, and that we really had a very diverse group of people come forward and say, this is an issue that we must do something about. So I had ministers, I had parents, I had a wide variety of people form a coalition and go to the schools and say, this is an important issue and we want you to address it. I met with a lot of opposition. I met with state legislators who didn't think it was important. they really felt that we needed to just concentrate on reading, writing, and arithmetic. Didn't understand why this issue had to come up in school. And so I had to really work with them to get them to understand why it was the last area of discrimination that we had not really done any work on, and why children's lives really were at stake.
They want everybody to accept them, and the truth of the matter is God doesn't accept them. He's the one who said it. God hates fags. Why do I hate him? Because God hates him. He was murdered.
21-year-old Matthew Shepard died this morning after 5 days on life support. 2 young men are expected to face first-degree murder charges in the death of Shepard, who was openly gay. The 3 allegedly met at a Laramie bar, then drove to a remote area where the 2 suspects allegedly beat Shepard and tied him to a fence.
Probably about 8 days after Matthew Shepard was murdered, in October of 1998, I received a 2.5-page letter from the chief of schools telling me that they, in fact, were giving their permission to distribute this film. And I really think, as many of my colleagues did at that time, that Matthew Shepard's death had something to do with that. In the last 8 or 9 years, I would say that easily 8,000 to 9,000 professionals have seen It's Elementary across the state. Unfortunately, we still have a lot of work to do on this issue in the school system, but I can safely say that It's Elementary really paved the way in getting schools to talk about this issue and to understand that they must address the issue for the safety of all students.
I'm Donna, and I'm 24. When I was your age, when I was in middle school and high school, I went out with boys, and I have some pictures I'll show you later of my prom date pictures. And it wasn't until I was in college that I started to realize that I was attracted to women.
That was the first time that I ever heard them having like stories about gay people in class. To be honest, I think I had a lot of stereotypes towards gay people that particular lesson helped me understand more.
You know, and sometimes like I'll walk down the street and people like drive by and yell "dyke" out the window or something, and that's really upsetting. Like, I don't know those people.
I remember the different people that came. It was really touching for everybody because we were talking about it at lunchtime, you know, Mr. Roth's class's first period. It touched me at the moment, you know what I mean? I really remembered like the different like struggles they went through being labeled and stuff. I think it broke through a lot of barriers. Kind of helped me to understand other people more.
That's you? Yeah, it's me. I had long hair then. It looked different.
Most of the time I put gays and lesbians down. I know it's not right, but I do it anyway. I say things like, gay men molest children, but that's not true. Most of the time, I don't even know what I'm saying. I say it all out of ignorance. I should find out what's true first before even saying anything about gays and lesbians.
Where's for the answer?
Okay, so that one looks, write it down right quick.
Also is 1.
Over and to the 8th. I'm a case manager for the Sunset Neighborhood Beacon Center. I work with kids who need help, you know what I mean, or someone to look up to. So is that right? The right answer to do? The insulting, the name calling, the lack of education, it's the same from when I was growing up. But when they get insulted, I back them up. Like, that's not cool. Don't be calling them no fag. Don't call them gay. That's not right. You know what I mean? I'm here to back them up. It doesn't matter who. I learn to respect people more. And I'm trying to teach these kids about respecting people, including gay folks, including black, white, green, alien, whatever it is. Just respect. And you got to give it so you can get it.
After the film had been out for about 2 years, we decided that we had enough support for the film. We had been getting endorsed by mainstream educational organizations. The film had started to be used in colleges and universities. We decided that it was time to take the message in the film to a much larger national audience. And so we offered the film for broadcast through public television.
That was really the moment where the organizations and the people who were really opposed to what we were doing went crazy and seized on the opportunity to try to stop all of the local stations from airing the film.
This is Headline News.
Conservative groups are attacking a new film about homosexuality.
It's Elementary, talking about gay issues in school, is being offered to schools and churches.
The homosexual activists aren't content with the idea that they ought to be left alone. They want to indoctrinate school children all over the country.
First of all, I don't think this is elementary. I think this is outrageous.
It's a textbook case for propaganda, manipulation, indoctrination, use of authority figures, peer pressure toward the desired goal of the video to say that homosexuality is good and those that disagree are bad.
The guy who was prancing around, the prancing around soccer coach, I don't want that guy teaching my son soccer.
I'm sorry, Colonel, that's bigotry.
Well, I'd never seen the level of passion directed on what we all thought in that moment was pretty small film. It wasn't as if it was a Hollywood blockbuster. Every direct mail letter of that time, every radio program, every television program had It's Elementary directly in its sights.
Well, there's a difference between teaching and discussing. Which is it? What do they want you to do? I mean, what are they talking about? Teaching sexual behavior?
No, it's about, I think it's more about tolerance.
It was the first time that the right-wing issues really came together, not only their attacks on LGBT people, but their feelings about what was appropriate in public education, the role of parents and non-parents in public education, funding for the arts. I mean, all of these issues came foursquare together right in this film.
The churches were, carrying the message that, public tax dollars were being used to promote homosexuality and how this was evil. And Sundays, were just a hotbed of discussion in churches here. I mean, all because they were going to show this pedagogical tape.
We couldn't believe it. It was, it's like, this is a television program. It was, we had support from the Ford Foundation. It was, and yet they were demanding, they were saying that basically there was going to be an apocalypse if this aired on television.
Homosexual activists believe that elementary school children should be taught that homosexuality is a natural and normal variation of human sexuality. The answer, homosexual activists insist, is to teach young children that gay is okay. And one of the most effective instruments of that push is a video entitled It's Elementary, talking about gay issues in school.
When we started offering the film to public television, all of a sudden we started hearing about some other video called Suffer the Children. And it turned out that one of the right-wing organizations had taken It's Elementary, pulled out about 20 minutes of our footage, and created this propaganda piece that was basically saying the gays are after your children and It's Elementary is the Trojan horse that is going to let them come out into your school and get your kids.
The Lord Jesus once said, "Suffer little children and forbid them not to come unto me." And our children now hear a different voice, saying, "Allow the children to come unto us, and we will teach them."
We started seeing direct mail fundraising pieces from the Christian Coalition, Focus on the Family, the Traditional Values Coalition, Coral Ridge Ministries, and they were front and center. What they were using to raise money was It's Elementary. And they were describing this film as a very calculated attempt by gay activists to recruit the next generation of sex partners.
The force here is coming from those movers and shakers behind the video It's Elementary, who really are using our babies as pawns in a political chess game.
It sanitizes it so well and makes it sound so loving, and let's just all, be so tolerant of this homosexual agenda. Actually, it's really nothing new. It goes back as far as Sodom. They're really sodomites. They're not gay. They're not happy people.
One of the places where we saw the most controversy was Idaho Public Television. It's Elementary, and the decision about whether or not to air it ended up being front page news for about 3 months.
Idaho Public Television, may I help you?
As soon as the Christian Coalition locally learned that public television was thinking about airing it, they waged a campaign, no holds barred campaign to stop it. And there were letters, and there were phone calls, and there were visits to state legislators who were putting the pressure on Idaho Public Television. Don't air this show.
Is that not amazing? I've traveled all
It was intense. I mean, there were days when literally I did nothing. I'd come in the morning and the phones would already be flashing, and I'd pick up the phone and I would spend the entire 8 hours doing nothing but responding to viewer comments and concerns. And they would barely get their name out, and they would be screaming at us about how the Bible says that this is an abomination, and you know, you're ruining our children. And
there were rallies down at the state capitol trying to whip up support both for us to air this program, and there were rallies to suggest that we not air this. My cars at home were vandalized by people that the police never found out who did it.
There were also billboards all over the state of Idaho opposing It's Elementary being shown. And then there was like graffiti all over the billboards that were all over the state of Idaho.
The best press attention is free press attention, and this press attention was front page, and it was in the headlines. It was It's Elementary, day after day we were talking about It's Elementary, and when it was going to be aired, and what time it was going to be aired.
The newspaper started receiving a lot of letters to the editor, and a community discussion, a really spirited community discussion sort of began. Everyone was dying to see it, to tell you the truth, to see what this was all about.
I think there was an enormous amount of fear about It's Elementary because it had the intersection of children, gays, and lesbians, and that tended to crank up the hysteria level in people, and a real genuine fear on their parts that somehow, by showing this program, we were going to convince children to become homosexual.
The decision about whether to air it ultimately went all the way to the governor's office, who ended up having to make a statement saying, yes, I think the film should air, but move it an hour later so we can be really sure that no children are watching this. But the film did air, and the public discussion did happen, and the world did not end in Idaho.
You reach that point in both your career and your personal life where you have to take a stand on something. And this is a program that gave me personally the opportunity to say, okay, I could cave, we can decide now, let's pass on the hassle that this will be. But you looked at it and you said, there's no reason why this program shouldn't air. And the issues that are raised in it are important issues that we need to be dealing with.
The most inspiring legacy of this film and all the public dialogue that has happened as a result of it is that there is an entire generation of young people now who have had exposure to discussion about lesbian and gay issues in their classroom with teachers that they respect.
And the kids who have been exposed to this kind of education are now out in the world, having been taught about the importance of what it means to include all different kinds of people in your understanding of the diverse and multicultural world that we live in.
I think we're making progress. There are more schools in this country where it's okay for a teacher who is gay to be open about their lives, where families where there are lesbian and gay family members can be welcomed into the school community, where teachers are being proactive in addressing anti-gay name-calling, and where schools are finding ways to integrate lesbian and gay issues into the curriculum. The reality is, though, that the majority of schools aren't like that still, and there are big pockets of this country where it's still really impossible for any of those things to happen.
What we lacked 10 years ago was the awareness. What we lack today is people taking action.
while we have a lot more visibility and a lot more awareness, it hasn't really translated into concrete improvements in most schools.
We still have places around the country, for example, where people will pull their students out of classes where LGBT issues are discussed.
And it's still very possible for a child to go from kindergarten through 12th grade and never meet a teacher who can explain why it's not okay to use the word fag.
So there's sadly an incredible need for this film even today. And I think in some ways that's truly sad commentary on the American school system. But thank God the film is there.